Hey guys, today at Summing Up E-Movies, I'm going to explain about a science fiction thriller film where a neuroscience expert tries to transfer the consciousness of his family who died in a serious accident to clones, bringing them back to life. Stay tuned. From now on, there will be spoilers. A helicopter carrying precious cargo flies to the island of Arecibo in Puerto Rico. William is waiting in his office for the cargo to arrive. The helicopter landed on the Bioni Industries property, and instantly the entire facility was informed of its arrival. William joins Scott and Margaret as they walk towards the experimental lab. He asks if the donor has signed the necessary documents. Ed hears the announcement, packs his things, and heads to the lab. The donor is being placed and unpacked in the lab next to a robot body. William and Ed discuss the details of the donor's death and then proceed with the experiment. Ed checks the donor's cortex for activity and declares him viable. William agrees with the findings and tells everyone that his biological brain will be replicated inside a synthetic brain. He, donors, then tells Ed to start the process, and Ed. The neural probe designed to perform the task is activated, and the brain transfer process begins. William initiates neural imprinting and works on the application of the human mind to the synthetic. He activates all the functions of the mind and tells Margaret to energize the body. The replica awakens, and William contacts the robot by calling the donor's name. The machine then starts moving. He asks who he is, and William explains that he has transitioned into a synthetic brain. As he goes online, he begins to freak out and tear himself apart, falling apart piece by piece, until William ends the matter and disconnects the cable that powers the robot body. William talks to Jones about the progress he's just made. Jones is unimpressed that the robot says a few things and adds that they need bigger results to keep the company's shareholders. William tells him that his family has made many sacrifices for his life's work. He promises Jones that he is very close to a breakthrough never seen before. Later, William drives home and finds his wife Mona at the front of the house putting her bags in the car for a family trip. He runs inside and sees that his kids Matt, Zoe, and Sophie still haven't packed their bags. Ed enters the house and Sophie gives him her pet fish, telling him not to forget to feed them. He asks William if he has spoken to Jones and if he has already been fired. Mona overhears the conversation and apparently doesn't really like the idea of her husband's project, saying that he needs to tidy up the smallest details before he starts bringing the dead back to life again. Mona is a doctor and doesn't like that people might be suffering in the tests that William performs in his lab. Carrying the last bags to the car, William says he is close to discovering something new. But there is still something missing for the synthetic brain to reach full consciousness. Mona says what's missing is a soul. William thinks not, saying it's all neurochemistry. She hates his answer and tells him that maybe he's losing sight of what's right and wrong. Finally, they say goodbye to Ed and continue their journey. Later that same day, they are driving in the rain and nearly crash into a truck. It was very little that they managed to dodge. Soon after, a tree hits the car and instantly kills Mona. So William loses control of the car and falls into the ravine at the side of the road and into a river. He regains consciousness and makes sure the family is okay. In a very tragic scene, everyone dies, and he was the only survivor of the accident. William doesn't call an ambulance, but instead calls Ed in despair. He asks Ed to get his equipment to the crash site as soon as possible. William asks him to help him, but Ed thinks they should call the police. Eventually, Ed changes his mind and helps William transfer his family's minds to the device. They arrive at the facility, and Ed tells him that there's a reason he hasn't made human clones yet, because they never work out. He asks William if he's prepared to close the process if something goes wrong. William doesn't give a straight answer on this. Ed shows him the cocoons in which he could replicate bodies, but he is concerned that William has not yet perfected the mind transfer process. They arrive at the bodies, and William begs Ed not to tell anyone what happened. Furthermore, he asks him to get rid of the bodies. Ed completely awkwardly sees no option but to agree and says he will meet William at his house. When Ed gets there, he opens the truck, and William sees that he only has 3 capsules to make the bodies. He doesn't want to choose which members of his family to resurrect, so he writes their names on pieces of paper and asks Ed to choose a paper with a name that would not be cloned. Ed nervously refuses to choose the role and says that William needs to do it. The role William takes is Zoe's. Later, Ed explains how to take care of the flows of the capsules and how to maintain the internal chemical balance. But the most important thing is to maintain the energy of the flows and ends by saying that they should never run out of energy in this process. William, however, doesn't have a backup generator, so he packs several car batteries and connects them all together. Ed says that the clones will need 17 days to form and that he has that time to solve the consciousness transfer problem. He asks him what will happen to Zoe. William says he will erase her memory from his drivers, and they will never remember her. He later manages to erase Zoe's memories of all her family members, but the hard drive with her consciousness is still active. A few days later, Ed is at work and runs into Jones, who asks him about William not showing up for work in the last week. He lies about the real reason for not being there, so Jones tells him to let him know that if they don't make progress with the synthetic soon, the projects will be shut down. Ed calls William to let him know what he's just heard, saying that if the project is shut down, the company will look for the expensive equipment William took home to replicate his family's bodies. William tells him that Ed needs to go over to his house to look at the pods, because William had a plan and needed to work. As soon as William arrives at work, Jones pays him a visit, and as a final reminder that he needs to make progress with the synthetic brain project. That same day, when William is arriving at his house, he finds the teacher at the door of his house, who came to see why Zoe didn't go to school that week. He dealt with the situation by saying that the girl had chickenpox. Later, William takes all of his family's laptops and phones and uses each of them to send emails to the kids' school, also to Mona's work, pretending to look like they're all still alive. Meanwhile, Margaret at the company is overseeing preparations in the robot's body. William is working from home, trying to find a way to transfer his mind from one body to another. He runs several simulations, and they all go wrong. He already seems to lose hope. The clones in the capsules are almost ready. Ed continues to cover for William at work as he tries one simulation after another, with almost no sleep for days. 17 days after the accident, Ed arrives at William's house to remove the clones from the capsules. William says he's not ready yet, because he doesn't know what's wrong with transferring the mind from one body to another. Ed explains that every moment, the bodies spend more inside the capsules. They keep aging, so waiting for him to solve the transfer problem is not a good option. William decides to sedate them, so he can keep their minds in a neutral state. Ed tells him that he can only keep the bodies sedated for a maximum of 72 hours, and nothing more. They then begin to drain the fluids from inside the capsules, and his wife's body begins to breathe on its own without the help of the machines. Ed is very excited as he sees that he has successfully cloned the bodies. They later set the monitors to keep everyone sedated, and Ed leaves, saying he'll be back the next day to check on them. William sees footage of his previously failed experiments, and still doesn't have an answer as to why they went wrong. That night, desperate and without many options, he decides to give up. And just as he is about to turn off his wife's equipment, he receives a call from Jones. As he is talking to him on the phone, he notices that every time he touches Mona's clone, her heartbeat increases. When Ed arrives at William's house in the morning, he excitedly explains that he has discovered how everything works. He takes Ed to Mona and shows him what he's discovered. He then explains that the reason the brain transfer doesn't work is because she's not in her own body. When they put consciousness into a synthetic brain, the mind goes crazy because it can't find its own flesh. The solution to the problem of transferring the mind to a synthetic one is to trick it into thinking that it is in its own body. And it should be even simpler with your family, because the bodies are exact clones of your original body. They prepare to begin the process of transferring Mona's mind into the clone's body. William coordinates the upload process and then starts programming. When it's over, Ed is scared that nothing is happening when she suddenly starts having seizures. Soon after, she wakes up and recognizes his eyes, so he puts her back to sleep until he does the same with her children's bodies. At the end of the day, after everything is done, Ed comes out and tells him that they will see each other at work the next day. William returns to the house and begins cleaning up evidence of what he has done. Lastly, he needs to get rid of all of Zoe's stuff around the house and make it look like she never existed. So she collects pictures, toys, clothes, and packs all her stuff and throws it away. Later that night, he lies on the bed next to his wife. William wakes up the next day and doesn't find Mona in bed. He gets up running and goes down to the kitchen and finds the three of them drinking coffee as if nothing had happened. Mona says she feels great and goes for a run. The kids ask for pancakes, and he makes some for them. This day, Mona is running when she suddenly feels a pain in her abdomen. When she comes back, Sophie pours milk into a glass, and they see that she is shivering. William gets a call from Ed, saying that they have a strange donor at work, and that if he doesn't want his secret out, he should go there ASAP. William tells the family that he has to go to work, and they don't see a problem with that. But Mona finds his behavior a bit strange. William then arrives at work and begins preparations together with Ed for the transfer. But William considers the donor unviable because he knows that consciousness will reject the synthetic body. So he wants the donor to suffer the same in the past tests that went wrong. William then has a crazy idea and solution to transfer his own mind to the synthetic brain. So he takes the transfer equipment to the bathroom and performs the transfer protocol on himself. Meanwhile, Sophie and Mona look for their cell phones and can't find them anywhere in the house. Mona feels slightly awkward. Back at work, William finds Ed and tells him his crazy plan. He explains that he will write an algorithm that will help link his consciousness to the artificial body, effectively tricking the synthetic brain that the body is really his. William returns to the house that night and finds Mona upset, telling him that she senses there is something wrong with her and feels awkward. She can't remember many things that happened in the last few weeks. He comforts her and says he should get some rest. He goes to the basement and writes down the algorithm he had told Ed. The unity with his consciousness is next to Zoe's that he still hasn't had the courage to erase. Livid. Later, Sophie has a nightmare about her mother's death, but William enters the room and tells her that it was all over and that it was just a nightmare. He takes her back to the basement and overwrites her memory in a way that deletes the image of the accident. Mona then appears and confusedly asks what he is doing with Sophie. She wants to know the truth. William, cornered and with no way out, says he brought them back from the dead. They have a long conversation, and she asks him how he can do this. He replies that he couldn't bear to lose them and that he needed to do something. She supposedly understands. The next day, the family finds Ed at the market. Mona looks at a random girl and almost remembers Zoe. They have dinner together that night. Sophie then asks who Zoe is, saying her name was scrawled on her locker with a crayon. The three begin to remember small details and moments about Zoe, and Mona confront William about it. He tries to lie to her, but Mona already suspects that something is wrong. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. William opens the door for Jones, who greets Mona and asks for a quick word with William. Jones opens the game and says he knows everything about his family and what William had done, and ends up saying that the replicated bodies were owned by the company, as William used the equipment and computers to carry out the process. Jones wants to use his family as an example that the project had worked, but still fearful that they will regain lost memories and collapse. William tries to negotiate with him, saying he knows how to make the synthetic brain work, but Jones is not interested in that. He explains that the company is not about biomedical, but is actually part of a weapons industry. Jones has another plan for his discoveries, not for science, but for weaponry. He tells William to provide the algorithm and say goodbye to his supposed family. William goes to get the algorithms, and Jones sends a message to two assassins to prepare. When William returns, he injects Jones with a drug, knocking him out. William then destroys the algorithm and explains everything about Zoe to Mona, and tells him about the company's true purpose that even he didn't know. William tells her that they need to hide, go somewhere else. They then get into the car and flee before the assassins realize what is happening. Jones wakes up to find the algorithm destroyed. One of the godmen walks in and shows them the tracker they have in the family, and tell him not to shoot them in the head. A car starts following William's family car, but they manage to escape. A nervous William tells Mona that the trackers are inside each of them, attached to the central nervous system, and that he can't get them out. Mona has another idea about this and tells him to drive to the clinic where he works. When they arrive at the clinic, Mona takes them to a room and tells Sophie to go to bed while she prepares a defibrillator. She explains that she can fry the trackers this way. Meanwhile, the assassins arrive at the hospital and see that one of the trackers has gone out. Mona places the defibrillator on Matt's chest, then turns it on and manages to disable the boy's tracker. The assassins kill the security guard, while William prepares to use the defibrillator on Mona. Their tracker is also turned off, and the assassins lose signal to find them. The family manages to escape the hospital. Meanwhile, Jones appears calling someone. William takes his clone family to a small harbor, where he tries to find a boat that Ed owned. As he searches for the keys, the assassins arrive at the harbor and take the children and Mona. William sees his family being taken away, but doesn't make it in time to save them. Ed is at the company office, and Jones arrives with William's family. Ed then asks them to cooperate, and everything will be fine. Mona asks Ed if they intend to kill them. Meanwhile, William arrives at the facility. Ed explains how it all happened, telling her that he was in it from the start. William arrives in the room where everyone is, and Ed starts to apologize for everything. He then tries to negotiate with Jones, who kills Ed to make his threats more powerful. William recreates the algorithm for Jones and begins the transfer process into the synthetic body. He energizes the body with his consciousness. William gives the algorithm to Jones. As Jones prepares to kill Mona, the robot enters, saying he is there to protect his family. The assassins shoot the robot, but that doesn't even scratch the synthetic body. The robot neutralizes all the killers. Meanwhile, the family gets in the car and is about to leave. But William can't just abandon the robot. Mona asks William to accelerate the car, but William returns and prevents the robot from killing Jones by suffocating. William and the robot talk, and the robot says that he was able to accept his synthetic body. Jones tells him that even if they kill him, the company will still go after them. William and the robot offer Jones a deal he can't refuse. The robot tells William he must leave with his family and he would take his place at the company to deal with Jones and his goals. 17 days later, a clone is about to emerge from the capsule. The family is on a beach vacation, and William brings Zoe back to them. Mona hugs her with immense happiness. Sometime later, Jones is in Dubai, selling William's invention to a rich old man. The robot has been doing all the work for Jones ever since now. And if you could transfer your consciousness into a clone or a synthetic body after your death, would you? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel by activating the bell to receive notification of the next videos here at Summarizing Films. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.